tens of thousands of students and their supporters have gathered in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka, to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. They blame the government for a violent crackdown on dissent, which left at least 200 people dead in recent protests against government job quotas.
Defiant voices with emotions running high. Bangladeshi students are on the streets again. Now they are demanding that the country's Prime Minister step down and that the government face trial for a deadly crackdown that has killed at least 200, mostly students and young people.
She must resign. And she must face trial. And not only Sheikh Hasina, her whole cabinet and the government must resign. This regime and the fascist rule must be abolished.
Bangladesh has arrested thousands of people and banned an opposition party as part of a crackdown on dissent. The violence left many with serious injuries.
I can feel the suffering and pain. I cannot express my pain when I'm lying in this hospital bed. I cannot move my legs, which are fractured in 8 places. I was not in the movement, so why did they shoot me?
These student protests started peacefully against government job quotas. And even though the quotas were scaled back, the police crackdown continued. The students continued protesting, seeking justice for those killed.
We've sought justice again and again. See, we have nothing in our hands. We never hold any weapons. We are normal people. We just want to live a life without discrimination. Such brutal killing is never acceptable in a democratic country.
Prime Minister Hasina called upon the protesters to sit down with her to put an end to violence. The protesters see this call for reconciliation has come too late. Hasina's government continues to struggle to control one of the most intense protest movements in Bangladesh's history.
Let's get more on the story from DW reporter Beenish Javed. Beenish, what do these tens of thousands of people on the street mean for the government of Sheikh Hasina?
Melissa, these protests today in Dhaka and in other parts of Bangladesh have just added to one which was already one of the worst crises that the government of Sheikh Hasina has faced in her 15 years tenure. This now poses a serious challenge to the leadership of Sheikh Hasina. These pictures that we see on the screen, basically these are just revival of the student protest movement that started basically against the government quota system. But this revival that we see on the screen is basically calling for accountability of at least 200 people that have been killed in these protests. But these protesters say killed because of the crackdown by the Bangladeshi state. Melissa, out of the at least 175 dead bodies that were analysed, the data of which were analysed by a Bangladeshi newspaper, according to that data, at least 137 of the bodies had bullet wounds, and more than 100 around 100 were less than 30 years old. This is like a trauma for the country. They are not forgetting what had happened. And now that the internet restrictions have loosened, curfew has loosened, the anger that the Bangladeshi people had, it's just that we see that anger now on the streets.
And they're not afraid. Does that mean that people don't think the security forces will turn their guns on young people again?
Melissa, there is international pressure and there is domestic pressure. First, if we talk of the domestic pressure, in the report we saw soundbite of Nahidul Islam, one of the protest coordinators. He was abducted twice. According to his family, he was tortured, he had bruises, and yet we see him with the crowd, defiant, with the courage, because these people, these coordinators have sort of become like a hero for many Bangladeshi people. And it's not only the students that we see now in these pictures. We see people from parents, we see lawyers, we see teachers, professors speaking up for the students. We see rickshaw pullers joining these protests. So there is this domestic pressure now on the government of Sheikh Hasina, but then there is also international pressure, especially from the UN, that has expressed serious concerns. We actually have a soundbite of the UN spokesperson. Let's have a listen to what he said.
The Secretary General is concerned about reported mass arrests of thousands of young people and political opposition in connection with the current student movement. He is also alarmed by emerging reports about the excessive use of force by security forces and credible evidence of human rights violations.
Now, the students just have one demand now. Before, they started out with a demand of a list of 9. If the Prime Minister concedes and steps down, which is the sole demand right now, do you think the protests will stop?
Of course, if the demand is fulfilled, then the protests ideally should stop. But the journey will not be that easy. So far, what we know, the government has resisted. So they might try out different ways. We already now have reports that the ruling Awami League has already ordered their, they want to mobilize their supporters, and they will come out on the streets on Sunday and Monday. So there is also fear that there could be clashes. But now the protest movement and the people, and so many people in such large numbers, it is really hard for me to comprehend or to even imagine that police can fire guns, police can fire, or the military can fire at such a large number of people. So it seems for now, Sheikh Hasina is in a very, very tough situation, and she may have to make a decision, a very, very tough decision for herself.
Beenish Javed, thank you so much for joining us. Nadine Shaanta Murshid is an associate professor at the University of Buffalo and currently in Dhaka. She was at the latest protest there and described what she saw.
Well, I will say that there's a lot of excitement in the air. I think the wind of change is perhaps blowing. It's a very diverse population. We see a lot of students from all walks of life, but we also see from various political affiliations as well. I think it's a kind of crowd that you don't often see in Bangladesh. They're there in the thousands, and that's amazing, because until recently, 2 weeks ago, I went to a protest and it was just like 15 people. And so within 2 weeks, we see a very huge increase in the number of people who are on the streets. And I think that's really interesting, also because it's very peaceful, diverse, and energetic at the same time.
How likely do you think it is that the Prime Minister steps down?
Well, that's a more difficult question, right? And it's hard to think about what's going to happen tomorrow, but I think it's perhaps easier to think about what's coming the day after, which is there is hope, right? We see a student protest movement that went from a quota movement and one that's aimed at equity and so on, to move on to state violence, and then to move on to this anti-state movement, and just in 2 weeks, right? And I think it speaks to a political consciousness that we haven't seen before, perhaps in the last decade or so. We've seen ways in which the student movement have been able to resist co-optation, and we've seen how students have shown how to be leaders in a more collective way. They are talking about governance in ways that are shared. They're talking about distributed leadership, and I think that's what's coming, and I think that's a space of real hope.
Nadine Shaanta Murshid, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.